Final Fantasy XIV is pretty clear in its messaging. It has a lot to say about a lot of things, but I want to look at one in particular today: the Empire. And importantly, how the game does its best to show the hypocrisy and the wake of said empire. To start, the 14th Legion, led by the Black Wolf, Gaius van Baelsar, a leader who believes in might make right, the ideology of many an empire in both fiction and reality, the idea that those with superior strength shall always be right, for they define justice. Often it is sugar-coated in the idealism of protecting the weak, raising a people through merit-based social climbing. Often it is proposed by those who genuinely believe they are in the right. Often it is used by those who have nothing else to offer. And Gaius does believe himself right. So do all of his followers. So does all of the Empire. Even the Emperor himself holds the same views as Gaius. But Gaius thought the best of his homeland, his people, and twisted their words to make them palatable. Yet it creeps through, it always does. How he didn't notice the blatant racism of his lower staff and the other leaders of Garlemald, I will never know. It's really obvious when Varys, the Emperor, believes Garlean's an Übermensch. I think I'm using that right. Sorta? Sorta. It's German and sounds imposing enough. Yeah, it'll do. Tut mir leid, nicht. The Legion itself is composed mostly from conscripts of occupied lands. Conscripts given little more than basic gambeson and pothelms in a world of might and magic. I've seen better protection given to PC-19 rookie pilots, let alone frontline soldiers. These conscripts are used as cannon fodder, given the opportunity to prove themselves in battle for Garlemald, certainly, but who die just the same. The 14th Legion is also comically incompetent. I know the Warrior of Light is the protagonist, so all must go their way, but the only time the Empire has a leg up on the Scions is a surprise attack on the Waking Sands. Every other time we interact with the 14th, it is a solid thrashing from us to them. Even our companions get in on it. Every scheme, every plan foiled by researchers and optimists. I must remind you that the Scions are scholars. The only vaguely combat-like study was Thancred's, and that was in the field of stealth. So an entire legion has apparently marched their way across the continent, conquering as they go, and is suddenly halted by the village bookworms and their pet chosen one. I'm ignoring Lys and Cartno, because Lys is not a Scion, technically. And Cartno, I didn't get to experience Cartno. If they wanted us to experience Cartno, they should have made it more than a 40-second cutscene, basically at the start of the game, when we're busy doing other stuff. Parents who threw everything away to become Guardian, given a promise they placed their hopes in, who have failed. Children who grew up hated by all, determined to make something of their existence, who forget who they are. The skulls. Several layers of delusions wrapping around themselves to protect the minds of those involved. These people were subjected to the cruelty of both the Garleans and the Alamegans, called traitor, yet still too proud of their home to give it up completely. Now, before I get into this next section, I will warn you that I am an Englishman, and I went into history. I am quite well versed in how the British Empire fucked everything up. It was beat into my head from the moment I could pick up a history book. And good, we did some fucking awful things. On a side note to this side note, I want to ask Squeenix if they have a resident historian, because a lot of the stories told in Stormblood come with a lot of historical similarities. The volunteer armies of the East India Trading Company, and then later the British Indian Army, men who volunteered to join the oppressive force for the promise of just not being trodden on. The King's commissioned Indian officers, or KCIOs, were officers of the British Indian Army who through deeds and doings were granted the honour of attending an academy back in Blighty, one of the RMCs, Sandhurst, Woolwich, Chatham, one of them. The promise of dominion over themselves if they fought alongside the British during World War I. A lot of these echo through Final Fantasy XIV, repeated in a way you can see. And much like the promises of real life, the Garleans often don't keep theirs either. It's just, you can see it. Now, back into the digital. The skulls are an imitation of an imitation, from their armor to their actions and ultimately their deaths. The Garleans, true blue Garleans to be precise, wear what might generously be called full-plate armor. This armor is twisted and deformed, spikes, growths, and scales. They are human in shape, but mock the idea of that humanity, showing draconic nature through purposeful emulation. The skulls have then tried to imitate that. Humans pretending to be beast, pretending to be human. They wear masks to hide their faces, loose cloth and short metal plates to obscure their form and their humanity. I'm sure it was just so they didn't have to make multiple models, but it really helps set them up as a group. The skulls also try to employ the violence of the Empire, but fail interestingly in this endeavor. They learned that violence is useful, but not how to employ it. The Empire is quick, violent to a very fine point, but efficient. The skulls, conversely, are quite crude, blunt. They don't shoot a man, an explosion of clean violence. Instead, they beat them. Blunt fists and heels, bruises and broken bones, things that can heal but will wound. If they do this out of some deep forgotten fondness for their kin, we will never know, for they fail. The promises of the Empire nothing but sand in a storm, as the very empire they fought to join turned them into another casualty, another forgotten savage. The people of Doma have had their hope stripped of them. Everything they hold dear in the crossfire of a vicious viceroy, and everything they held dear already destroyed. Years upon years have drained the life from these people, and yet they could also be to blame, depending on who you ask. Yotsu is fascinating. She is the Cinderella who never got a happy end, who didn't have a fairy godmother. She lost her family in the Garlean invasion. Abused by her foster family as she grew, she was sold to a man she did not want and sent to a brothel when that man died. She was a beaten dog in a rain-soaked world. So when in this placid, hateful world, a spark of hope is given, would not anyone leap at the chance? even if the devil was holding that spark closely. Despite everything I have just said, I cannot forgive Yotsuyu. She had a choice. Everyone has a choice, and she chose to do all of the vile things she did. It may have been in the name of revenge, but she chose to do them. And yet, I do not blame her. I blame Garlemald. First for invading, obviously, but also for then creating the world which would form her. They beat a country into submission so bad, they drained the people of the ability to look beyond themselves. The Domans were busy surviving, keeping themselves and their families safe. You can only do so much for so many people when the world hates you. And in that hateful world, you forget to be a good person. If you could gain from the suffering of another, it's just another drop in the bucket. The Domans created Yotsuyu, aye, but the Garleans created this new generation of Domans. I wanted to go into the other empires, Alag, Yulmor, if you could count them, but I realized I was just repeating myself. Alag followed a might-make-right ideology with a techno-medieval coat of paint. Yulmor is an entire case study on apathy and the loss of hope throughout a society. And just to beat you over the head with another metaphor, who came up with these empires? None other than the big man Hades himself. Same MO, same fading glory. Hades is just a physical embodiment of the ideologies that create empires. The next thing I need to do is define what I mean by anti-imperial. You might have forgotten, but that is the title of the video. And for that, I need to uncover imperialism itself. If you thought this was just going to be a quick rattle of bullet points, no. I always have some random bit of philosophy hidden in the back pocket. Imperialism is an interesting thing. It has come to mean so much in this modern age, to have so many undefinable attributes. Is it simply the physical act of taking something by force? Can you take a thought by force, for instance, a culture even? Do you have to replace it? Is silencing another imperialism? Is questioning someone imperialism? Is moving into a new neighborhood imperialism? Is introducing someone to your favorite hobby imperialism? Is it being different and going into a new place? All this is very subjective. So I'm not going to quote Merriam or any other dictionary, simply express my own beliefs. Deep breath for this one. In my mind, being anti-imperialism is to demonstrate and point out the evil or the shortcomings of a person or people who force their own culture and ideas upon another person or people in order to remove or replace the previous culture and ideas. Okay. I need to use more commas. It's a touch wordy, but it gets the idea across. And I think 14 subscribes to a similar definition. Pulling us back into the station, 14 does its best to show those who would impede another person's identity as poor in some fashion, outwardly evil in most cases, but incompetent in others and fanatical in the rest. It shows the Garlean Empire as both an unthinking, unfeeling mass of expansion and a wholly temperamental bundle of incompetence. It shows the devastating effects of long-term occupation by people who do not see you their equal, people who would want to remove your culture. It shows Yulmorans as apathetic nihilists who have forgotten themselves, the Asians as misbegotten, twisted, remnants of a long forgotten society. But most importantly for me, it shows humanity. The people we meet have suffered for longer than any of us could imagine. They are rightfully jaded, and yet, through actions and deeds, we are able to relight that spark of hope. These people are messy, complicated bundles, but the idea of a better tomorrow, a place for all, without the oppression or injustice, that is anti-imperialism at its finest.